Welcome back to Power Platform PhD. I'm Alex, and today we're going to be discussing the body and outputs function expressions and how we can target some JSON in our Power Automate. Please click the like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you at my desktop. Okay, here we are at my desktop. As I mentioned in the intro, today we're going to talk about the body and outputs function expressions. This is the third video in our continued series on JSON and the Power Platform. So if you haven't seen the first two videos, I highly suggest you go check those out. If you're just looking for specific information on body and outputs, then this is the video you want to look at. So let's go ahead and move over to Power Automate and create an instant Cloudflow. We'll give this a name and manually trigger our flow and click on Create. Let's move this up for some real estate. So the first thing we want to do is create a compose that's going to hold the JSON that we're going to use throughout this example. So let's go ahead and find compose. And click on that. And then in the inputs, we want to paste in this JSON object. This is the same one we've been using throughout this series. So we will go ahead and Control C that. And then now Control V, and we have a compose. Now, if you remember the last time we used parse JSON to parse out that information, so let's go ahead and do that again here. So we're going to look for parse JSON, and there it is. And we paste in the same JSON object a couple of times. So we're going to paste it here. Then remember, we have to also paste in the schema. So we paste it in the schema and click Done. And then at this point, we should be good for that. So let's create one more compose before we run this. And this is where we're going to target the body. So let's look at the documentation first. So here is the body function expression. What does it say? It says it returns an action's body output at runtime. They give you a shorthand for the full beneath the scenes, how it kind of creates that underneath the hood. But for our purposes, we're looking for body being the name of the function, and then between single quotes, the action name. So what does that look like in our example? So in our example, we're trying to target this, the parse JSON action. So we want to pull this information out. So if I go here, click on function expression and start typing in body, you'll see the body function pops up. We'll click on that, open parentheses and single quotes, and we are going to type in parse underscore JSON, because remember, if the name has a space, then it has to be has to use a underscore to denote that in the function names. So let's go ahead and say add, and then let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so it ran successfully, as you can see. So really simple Power Automate. We just have a compose that has our JSON object. You can see the inputs and outputs, then we parsed it out. And then in our compose, we use the body function expression to target the body of this parse JSON. So we're going to look at two things. One is, what is this body thing, and how does this show up in our edit? So let's go to edit real quick. If you remember, initially this was an actual function expression. So if I mouse over, you can see the function, but it changed to this little purple V thing. It didn't look like that pink FX, which was the one we wrote. And so we're going to look to see why was that. So let me click off of this. If you click on the dynamic lightning bolt, you'll see that there's already some variables that are given to you. So once you've used the parse JSON action, it has all of these default variables that it's created for you. So let's go ahead and click on all of them. You can kind of see, so there's like the movie title, year, serial killer, kind of has all of them, even the victims, which is an array. It doesn't go further than that. Like you'd have to use some actual code to pick a single object out of there, like whether it's the second element or third or whatever, and maybe the method or the name of the victim. We'll do that a little bit further in the video. But I just wanted to show you that out of the parse JSON, that these are some of the default things. So if you create a function expression and it already exists as a variable, that's what that little V stands for. So we have body. So this is what it was kind of showing us. But if I mouse over it again, you can see the function expression that's below that calls that. All right, so I just wanted to show you that. So let's go ahead and move on and do something a little bit more. I don't know. Let's look at our JSON object again. How about we try to target this victims array. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll go back into our automate. We're going to compose again. I'm not going to really worry too much about renaming all these composes. So forgive me for having like compose 1, compose 2, compose 3, whatever. But let's go ahead and just for simplicity's sake. All right, so in this one, we're going to go ahead and target the victims. So where is that on the JSON object? So it's still first level, and it's just victims. So I'm going to show you a couple of things. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and use the body function expression. So body, single quotes. Remember, we're using parse JSON, so parse underscore JSON. And now we're just going to type in victims. This is using the dot notation version. So let me go ahead and add that. But I also want to show you another version. This is the version that Microsoft's going to use. But let's run this first and see what we're talking about. Okay, it's finished running. So let's see what we have here. So the compose2 returns in the outputs the victims array. So let's click on this so you can see it a little bit better than over here on the sidebar. So here we go. This is what it returned. All right, that's exactly what we were looking for. So let's try another little example where I want to show you how, if you go into, so let's go back into edit mode. Let's edit this. We're going to add another compose. Learn how to type first. And click on compose. And so we targeted the victims array. I want to try that again, but I want to show you if I go ahead and do this via the dynamic, not function expression, but using that Shazam looking lightning bolt thing that gives you all the dynamic variables. So going back to this one, we targeted the victims. And if I scroll down, we can see this. I'm going to click on that. But I want to show you the code view. All right, so this is the way Microsoft under the hood normally writes it. So unless you explicitly do like what we did, okay, we did the dot notation. Microsoft, I guess, default way is doing the query notation, if you want to call it that, where it has the question marks and then the names of the properties or the keys or whatever between brackets. And we talked about this in the last video, but I just wanted to show you this. But let's go back to compose 2. If I go into the code view, you can see this is how we wrote it with the dot notation. So there's dot notation, and then there's the query notation. So same sort of deal. We'll talk a little bit more about this code view and some other things here in the future, but I just wanted to show you that. So let me go ahead and run this again. Okay, as you can see, it has run successfully. These were the last two that we targeted that victims array. So in the first compose 2, it went ahead and returned that victims array. Let's open this up so we can see it a little bit better. So this is a way we targeted one way using the dot notation, and then using, again, this query notation. Let's look at that one. All right. Same deal. We just two different syntaxes to pull the same sort of information back. All right. So again, as I mentioned in the first part of this, where if you go ahead and click on the dynamic version of this, that it only goes so far. So let's go ahead and try to target, let's say, the second victim. Let's see how we can do that in both syntaxes. So let's go back. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Click on edit. All right, so let's go ahead and add another compose. All right, we're going to use the dot notation version of this one first. So let's go click on this function expression, type in body, parse underscore JSON dot victims. And then if you remember, using brackets, we can target which element. So this array has, I believe, 4 or 5. Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 5. Go to target Ned Rubenstein. So remember, it's being 0 based. So the second one is a 1. All right, so let's go ahead and add that. And then I'm going to add another compose, show that using the other syntax. This is the query syntax. So same sort of deal, but because it doesn't show up, so let me look at the dynamic thing again. So if I go up here and I try to look at that parse JSON, let's see, I don't see a way I can skip. It stops at victims. It doesn't know it until runtime, like how many elements there could be, which is why it stops there. But here, I'm actually going to, no, I'm not going to click on that. We'll just write it all out. So let's go back to function expression, body, parse underscore JSON. All right, now we're not using the dot notation. We're going to use the query notation. So it starts off with like the question mark and then brackets and single quotes the name of the key that we're trying to get, which is victims, and then again brackets, and we want to target the second element. So again, it's a 1 because it's 0 base. So we're going to go ahead and add that. Let's go ahead and test this one out. Okay, so we're back up. Let's go ahead and look and see what we got. So under the compose 4, we ended up getting Ned Rubinstein and hunting knife. And the same thing goes for compose 5. The only difference between these two, again, is syntax. So in compose 4, if you look at the code view, we can see that we use the dot notation. So dot victims. And then for compose 5, we went ahead and used, let's look at the code view. We went ahead and used the query notation, which uses the question mark and the brackets. So let's do one more example, just going one step further. And this time we want to go ahead and let's say target Marcy Standler. So this will be the second index or third element. So 0, 1, 2. We're going to target Marcy Standler and we want to just take the name out. So I'm going to go ahead and do a real quick edit. Where is it? We'll edit this here. So let's add another compose. And so for the first one, we're going to use the dot notation. So FX, I'm going to go ahead and paste this in there so you don't have to watch me typing it out. So body, parse JSON, we're using dot notation, so dot victims. We want to target the third element, so the second index being 0-based arrays, and then dot name. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. And then we're going to add another compose. And then for this one, we're going to go ahead and use the query notation. So click on the function expression, click on this. Again, I'm going to paste it in there to save time. And again, let's look at this real quick. So question mark, then you go in through brackets, the name of the key, the element that's in the array, and then the property. That's how you do that. Let's go ahead and click on add. And let's go ahead and run and test this one real quick. Okay, let's see what we have here. So under compose 6 and compose 7, we were targeting this Marcy Standler, who is in the third element, the second index. So, and we're targeting the name property. So let's go ahead and look at this. So compose 6 did pull in Marcy Standler, as did compose 7. The only difference being in code 7, we were using the query syntax, if you want to call it that, and the other one we were using the dot notation version. So same thing, just different ways of doing it. So let's go ahead and move on to outputs, the outputs function expression. So let's look at the documentation. So under the documentation, you can look at the outputs function. It says returns and actions output at runtime. And we've been pretty much doing this the whole time. So let's go back and look and kind of see the example. So let's get another compose in here. Let's edit this out real quick. Go into edit mode. Let's do add. Come on. Add another compose. So under compose, we can kind of see that if you hit the dynamic expression, we can click. These are all of these outputs. So outputs, outputs, outputs. So if I was just to target compose 5, I can't remember which one that was. Whatever that value was, we would just get that from the outputs. And that's all the outputs function does. So if you scroll down, the initial output was from compose. This original compose was the full JSON object. So if I go ahead and click on that and I'm going to mouse over it, you can kind of see the syntax for it. So outputs compose, and this is going to return that JSON object. But let's go ahead and do something that's a little bit more tricky than that. I'm not going to do the basic one. Let's go ahead and kind of do the same thing we just did in the last one where we were targeting the name. So let's go back and look at our JSON object again. And this time we're going to do, how about we do the victims? We're going to do the fourth element, and instead of the name, we're going to do the method. Let's try to get this machete out there. So let's go back to our thing, click on function expression. And so with this one, we're going to use the outputs, oops, come right now. Okay, outputs. And if you remember, compose was the name of that original action. So we want to get compose. And then we're going to use the dot notation version of this one. So victims. And I'm sorry, we want the, which one did we want again? We want to get the machete. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So we want the 3. Let's put a 3 in there. And the method that the victim was killed. So that's what I'm going to copy and paste this just to make things a little bit easier and say add. All right, we have that one. This is not liking something. I don't know. What is it not liking? Outputs, compose, dot victims, dot method. That should be good. Let me go ahead. And I think it just was kind of caching that error that I had before. So let's type in compose again. Click on that. And this time I'm going to do function expression. I'm going to paste it in there, but we're going to go ahead and change that syntax to the query. So how do you turn dot notation into a query string? We're just going to change the dot to a question mark. Then we're going to have to go ahead and put the victims in single quotes. And I think I know what the issue was with that last one. And then method, the same thing. We're going to do this, single quote, this, outputs, compose. Okay, that looks good. Let me add that. Oh man, what am I doing wrong here? Oh, I have a dot. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so let's add that. Let's go back and look at the other one, just make sure that's not an error too. So dot, victim, dot, dot, dot. This one, make sure there's no dots in there. Okay, that looks good. Let's update that and go, let's run and test this one, see how this one comes out. Okay, let's have a look at compose 8. It returns machete in the outputs, and also compose 9, the same thing. The only difference between these two, again, is syntax. If you look at the compose 9, we're looking at the query string version of this, and compose 8 was using the dot notation version of that. That's pretty much it. So I don't want to go too much further into outputs. It's really the same sort of thing as we did in body, where depending on how you want to delve into that JSON object, if it's first level or if you break it into an array or object, or whatever, you're just going to keep using those dots or those brackets to delve into the specific value that you're trying to return. Well, that pretty much sums it up. If you have any questions or comments, just hit me up in the comment section. Also, please hit the subscribe and like button, and I'll catch you in the next one.